Welcome into the Thursday edition of Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. I got a surprise for you guys today. Actually, a couple of, I know at least one native Minnesotan here today, and it's not their first time on the program, but I got a chance to scope them out on Discovery Plus, and I had a very enjoyable almost 2 hours, a little under 2 hours, watching what is supposed to be, I guess for lack of a better term, a prequel online. And I had quite an enjoyable time watching it. And we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about Trail to Terror. It's Destination Fear's first. Let's see. Let's bring them in, and we'll try to clear up my confusion as to what this is. It's their first investigations or their first pilot, put it that way. But it's been released as a movie for you guys to enjoy. Let's bring in Dakota Laden and Tanner Wiseman to the team. How you guys doing? So clear up my confusion here, Dakota. This is actually was shot as a pilot, correct? To begin with?
Well, not really, actually. We shot it as a documentary, but we knew going into it that we might be able to make like a sizzle reel out of this or something. Like we knew the idea was cool enough to be more than a doc. So the goal was we're going to shoot a documentary. Whatever happens, happens. We might even end up just releasing it on YouTube for free. Like we had no really idea what it would do. But sometime in the middle of making this, and once we got back, we realized right away, like, man, this would be such a cool TV show too. Mm-hmm. So I actually stopped editing the documentary completely, and for a good month started putting together sizzle reels and like a pilot. And we tried to sell it. Didn't work. Mm-hmm. And several years later, it did.
Yeah, and it worked in a huge way. Tanner, tell me this. When Dakota kind of throws this across your way, what's your first reaction to it? Do you think to yourself, cool idea? Or do you think, boy, am I going to end up buying quite a few pairs of Depends to wear on the journey? What's your reaction?
Exactly. That's the best part is because he came to me with the idea is, we're going to travel across the country, going to the 5 scariest places in America, back to back to back. And the catch is he's the only one who knows where we're going. Mm-hmm. So when he initially brought it up to me, I had a bunch of questions that couldn't have an answer. I couldn't ask, where are we going? What are the places? Like, what should I prepare for? Are we going south? Are we going north? Like, am I bringing a jacket or a swimsuit? My suitcase it looked like a manic person just completely packed that time around because I had no idea what was going on. So yeah, I had a lot of questions and I didn't get a whole lot of answers. So I just said, yes, let's do it. And here we are.
There's a certain amount of mental and psychological gymnastics involved in the Trail to Terror that there is not in the TV show. Obviously, in Trail to Terror, to kind of set it up for our audience here, if they haven't seen it yet already, you're talking 5 nights in a row, 5 destinations, and these aren't light destinations. Anyone who's a paranormal investigator, a hobbyist, whatever you want to call yourself, who stepped into any of these investigations, this isn't a cakewalk. It's not a walk in the park. It's not anything like that. And as we go along the trail, each one ramps up. So it's not like you get a little bit of a port in a storm, so to speak. And each one ends in you trying to sleep overnight or trying to get a little bit of a rest, even after you've walked around, investigated the place, and had experiences. So you have to try to settle in and try to sleep. And then even as you have spirits messing with you, trying to bunk down and trying to get a little bit of rest. And a lot of times that's all for naught. Dakota, let me throw this your way. So as you're going on this Trail to Terror, as you decide, you know what, I'm going to reform this thing, what makes you think to yourself, well, now I want to make it a marathon. Now I want to see if we can try to survive some sort of horror or terror marathon. Where does that come from?
I think, for us, we all grew up doing this, exploring abandoned buildings and urban exploring. And so it kind of the whole idea of doing a road trip was so like natural to us. Like we've always wanted to do a road trip and go to some of these places that we didn't grow up near. But the idea of doing it back to back to back, I thought was going to be interesting. It's something I've never seen on anything in other programs before. And I know it was like we wanted to mix doing a paranormal adventure and go do what we love to do in urban explore. But we also wanted to have somewhat of a feeling of like a survival show in a way. It's like some of those shows where they drop people off and they survive for 10 days, 20 days. And we wanted to mix both, we wanted to see if we could do it too. Like, what does that do to your body? What types, how do you feel at the end of this? And then we've always been told by people in the industry that the paranormal may feed off of fear. And so not only was sleeping alone in these places going to add fear, but also the idea that we're not getting a break. It really, like for us, when we did this, there was a stark contrast from night to day. Because in the nighttime, we're in the RV, it's lighthearted. But then as it gets closer to night, you know what's happening, you know what's about to go down. And you can see it too in the doc that like by night 3, we were pretty fried. We were pretty dang scared. And then, the other thing too is when you have an experience like night 3 on the dock, where everyone goes through some pretty traumatic experiences, it just makes the next night harder. If we would have gone home for a week and then went to the 4th place, we would have had time to, get a little more confidence, but we really, I don't know. It felt like it was the right move. Like, let's make this a challenge. And then, it did kind of psych us out in a way, because now night 4 and 5, we're terrified just because of what happened night 3.
You mentioned that fatigue factor, and Tanner, I want to talk to you about this a little bit. Now, during the day, obviously, for those of you who have seen the movie, you know exactly what happens during the day. For those of you who haven't, Dakota, you go to shoot stand-ups, or you go to shoot interviews, along with Colin, who's your cameraman, or your lead cameraman on this deal. Tanner and Chelsea are left in the lurch, so to speak. Your sister Chelsea, who's also an investigator on this. And you're left back at the hotel to wonder what it is, Tanner, that you're about to get into. Now, I have to ask this, because as Dakota just put it, there's this fatigue factor, but you're also left behind. And I got to think that maybe there's a nap in there somewhere. Was there? Or were you diligent and did you keep yourself awake?
So there was a little bit of everything, to be honest with you. Because sometimes I would be jumping on the RV and driving. I mean, we would take turns driving. So like some people would try to get their naps in on the road while we're traveling across a different state into another one. And when me and Chelsea were back at the hotel, like sometimes there were times where we're like, let's try to get a nap in. We'll have a little bit extra energy because we are doing this thing from sunset to sunrise. So, I mean, we're in there for forever. And so there was a little bit of that. But to be honest, it's really hard to get your brain to rest and get a nap in quick when you know, okay, in 4 hours, I'm going to a mystery location and it's going to be worse than the night before. And so me and Chelsea would more often than not just go back and forth of guessing what we think it might be. What do you think might happen? Like just coming up with the wildest stories in our brains. And like, it was almost impossible to fall asleep, but there were a couple times where I was able to get a nap in.
All right. I'm going to ask a question. Now that you guys have seasons of Destination Fear under your belt, and looking back now onto Trail to Terror, I'll ask Dakota first, then I'll ask you, Tanner. Is it better to be prepared going into a destination, knowing everything you know and knowing what you're about to face, and then investigate? Or is it better to not be aware and then be sprung on by surprise, get everything just right there, and then be hit in the face with everything? Dakota, you first. If our sole purpose was to just investigate and get to the bottom of things, then I would say maybe it's better to be prepared to know what we're getting into. But we've never even really considered ourselves full-on investigators. We really are more explorers, and we'll put investigative tactics to use since everyone else is doing it. So I think with what we're doing, it is better to almost be not prepared and
to just show up with little expectations and see what happens. But I don't know. It's hard because you could really psych yourself out if you know too much, and then now you're more scared than you would have been without knowing anything.
Yeah, I was going to say someone that's like, there's a happy medium in there, like, because we all, now in the later seasons, we get to pick a location, and it is nice to know kind of the history. What are the hauntings there? We use the obvious a lot, and we use digital recorder a lot. So if we get a name, it is nice to be like, okay, like that name actually matches up with our research. But there is something being completely in the blind that is, I wouldn't necessarily say kind of feels like a safety net or feels better, but there is something about going in there, not letting your mind do any tricks on you, not forcing your thoughts in a certain direction, and just allowing the building to speak for itself. That I actually find a little bit more rewarding when you go in there and you get something to happen. Because when you're not looking for something and something happens, I really feel like it's more, what's the word? I feel like it's just a better way to go about it. Because then there's no bias behind it. It's just what happened in front of you happened, and you weren't directly looking for it.
Bias is a good word there, Tanner. It really is. We can walk in, especially when we're surrounded by historical evidence and evidence of other investigators, and it's thrown in front of us. We can almost be hit about the head with it. And then you go in expecting something to happen, and you try to match stories to what it is we're getting. And then you try to fit a round peg in a square hole.
Right.
You brought something up interesting, and you said a key phrase here, Dakota, and I want to expound on it a little bit. You use the term explorers instead of investigators. Expound on that for me a little bit, because everybody runs around wanting to be a paranormal investigator, and I find it refreshing that you didn't call yourself an investigator. I think because when we watch this movie in particular, this Trail to Terror, there is a distinct lack of equipment.
Yes.
And there is a distinct dependency on the eyes, the ears, the sensations of what's going on around you, and really paying attention to your environment. I mean, you use the infrared camera, and you use, equipment to film, obviously. But it really is about the sensation of what's going on, and terror and fear are in the titles of the project. Mm-hmm. Explorer is a good term, but expound on that for me. Why label yourself an explorer and not an investigator after all this time, especially?
You could argue that maybe with my work on Ghost Adventures and working with them, that I could be considered an investigator. But when we first started this thing, that was not our goal. Our goal, we're not that like professional, or it would be a shame almost to call ourselves investigators when that's not our goal. Our goal is to put some stories to the test and also put ourselves in vulnerable situations. And the most we ever do is go like, yep, I think this is haunted. But I would hate to be an investigator, because I would say we need a lot more time to really properly call ourselves that. And I don't even think that's where our passions are. Our passions are about adrenaline and chasing fear. And when you talk about the gear too, if it was really up to me, every single thing we did, we would never use gear. But in the doc, what you're seeing is 5 nights, and each night is about 8 to 12 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then we move on to the next. So when we do TV, it has to be a 42-minute episode for an hour. Right. And it just isn't enough to just walk in and just let the building talk. So we do still implement that a lot, where we'll start with no gear, walk around. But just through the years from working with Ghost Adventures and meeting some of these people, we thought it was best, like, might as well put it to the test, some of this gear that people are using. Mm-hmm. And why not? Like, why not try it? But yeah, I don't know. Being an investigator, I just don't think I take myself that seriously yet. And I don't want people to have the wrong idea either. Because if we call ourselves investigators, people might watch the show differently and expect more things out of us. And Like, you will never see me at a house case helping a family because I don't think I'm qualified.
Okay. Tanner, do you support that too? Or do you think you're more of an explorer than an investigator?
Definitely. I mean, the thing is like what we're told is that this building is haunted. And then we learn about all these stories of people having their experiences in there. And we used to even call ourselves paranormal experiencers before we called each other explorers, because our whole thing is to go into a building and see if those stories can happen to us and to see if there's any legitimacy behind those stories. And more often than not, we have run into these buildings and explored them and gone into random parts of the building. And some of these stories have happened to us. And the reason why we use equipment, the reason why we're pulling out all these gadgets is because some of these people that are in there are using these gadgets and using these tools. And we'd almost feel like it'd be a shame to not give it a try. It'd be like going fishing without a hook, in a sense, where it's like, why are you even out there if you're not going to use the proper equipment? So we go out there using the equipment, but like we've always said, like we're not going to have our names etched in stone next to Ed and Lorraine Warren, and we're not going to have this. What we're doing is truly trying to explore these buildings and see, do these stories match up with ours, or can we have something happen to us? And that's why we we try to go with, we're more explorers than we are investigators.
I'm going to ask you a kind of a pertinent and a weird question, and don't get offended by this question, but also don't think of it as a question of bravado either. And I'm going to ask you first, Tanner, and Dakota, I want you to follow up with your answer as well.
Sure.
Because you do give into emotion, because you do give into the moment, because you put yourself in the moment, and you do show fear, you do show the fact that you're startled, or you do show the fact that you react in general. Do you feel like you get more evidence on camera, more real evidence on camera than other shows?
Well, I'll start off by saying, like, everyone has had a ghost story. Everyone has gone in the basement, turned off the lights, and for some reason or another have run up those stairs as fast as they can. There is something scary about being in the dark. And once you go into a building that's supposed to be the most haunted building in America and something kind of scary happens, I think you'd almost be doing yourself a disservice to try to act like you're being tough. To show your true emotion is almost doing a better service for not only yourself, but for people who are watching. Like, if I am scared, I should tell you that I'm scared and not fake that emotion. Like, right. There's something to be said about allowing you to feel what you feel and not try to play up to the camera. I think when people try to play up to the camera, I just don't feel that that's like the right way to go. I truly believe that because we're showing that we're scared, we've gone to 40 plus locations now. And every time that we've shown that we are scared or we're showing a little bit of fear, we've had something ramp up. And that's been kind of the whole test and the thesis of this show is, what happens if you show fear? Does fear feed the paranormal, or does it feed the building to allow it to do more stuff? And from the times that we've done it, every time we've shown some type of emotion like that, it has ramped up.
Yeah, I think too, a little bit of that too is like when we first started the season one, that was something we all talked about actually, was don't hold back. If you're feeling nauseous, say out loud you're feeling nauseous. Like, we want to know. This is an experiment on our psychological effects, and we want to know how you're feeling. And especially when you're in your sleeping arrangement, it's better to just talk to the camera, tell them how you're feeling, than to just be quiet. Because then it's like, well, what's going on? Are they okay? And it's important to know. And then you mentioned evidence too. Like, do you think we're getting more than other shows? I don't know. I feel like a lot of shows get a lot of evidence, and this is like no offense to other shows, but I can definitely guarantee you that we are spending way more time in these buildings. A lot of shows might claim to spend the night, but I can tell you for a fact they don't. And when we spend the night at these places, we literally get dropped off at 6 p.m. We have our driver, anyone who's there getting the shots of us walking in, they leave. We force them to leave because we want to be scared. We don't have an audio guy. It's just us, and our handheld cameras are our audio. And we're there for 12 plus hours. So I think if people think we're getting more evidence, I think the only reason is because we're we're giving it more of a chance. We're actually spending the full night, and there's no breaks. Like there's times where we're recording and we know by 2:30 to 3 a.m. we have to be sleeping to get that 3 to 4 hours of sleeping alone. And so there's times from 6 to midnight where it's like we don't stop. There's maybe a 5-minute break to get a drink of water, go to the bathroom in our gear room, and we'll go to the next spot. And that's maybe why people think, if people do even think that our show has more evidence, I think the answer is right there. Like some of these shows don't spend the full night. Some of them aren't even there past midnight.
I know this much, just watching Trail to Terror, my back was killing me with you guys laying on cement floors. I know that part alone, I'm thinking you guys are going to have degenerated spines by the time you're 40.
True.
That was the scariest part of the entire movie for me, was those cement floors. The one thing that really amazes me too, not on top, just along with the 5-day psychological marathon that you went through, and the fact that you continued to one scare after another, is the fact that with the scare, you open yourself up. Okay. And I think, we're not holding any secrets back here when we say, as you experience fear, you open yourself to whatever element is there. There is, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling the audience, there's a moment where it gets a little overwhelming, and there's YouTube and as well as Chelsea and Colin, all four of you are very spiritual people. So you stop for a moment to do a prayer of protection, which I commend you all on. There was a line that Colin said that I don't agree with, and that was at the time, and I realized there might have been a little bit of inexperience on his part at that point, where he said, "We're people of faith, we can't be possessed," or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I cringed the moment he said that. We're all right. We're all people of faith, but people get possessed all the time. But the fact that at that point you did a prayer, I commend you for that. Yeah. Let me ask you this, and I'm gonna, again, I'll start with Tanner and then I'll go to Dakota. Is that ever a concern? The fact that it's the constant giving in to that dark force and giving that emotion and opening yourself up. Do you ever worry that there's going to be that one time where you give in a little too deep and maybe something happens and maybe bring something home with you? Not necessarily become possessed, but that maybe you get a dark attachment and bring that dark attachment home with you.
I mean, that's a phenomenal question. It's actually something that we've had private conversations about where, we all are very strong in faith. I've grown up in a faith-based home. I've done a bunch of volunteer work for my local church, gone on a couple mission trips myself. And the one thing that we always try to focus on is, and what Dakota even says in the first episode of Destination Fear, is that we need to focus on the light. Mm-hmm. Yep. You start focusing on the darkness, that's when you start allowing it closer and closer and closer. And, we're not experts in the ministry and anything like that. But we do believe that if we can keep our heart with our strength, the faith and our strength and all of that, mm-hmm. that, we are less likely to have anything like a possession happen. Now, again, we're not saying that we're immune to that. I mean, there are some dark places. There's been some people who have done rituals at these places, and you never know what could happen. And that's kind of the risk factor behind it all. But at the same time, we have a very strong faith, and we try to hold ourselves in there and anchor ourselves within that. And another thing that I think really helps us out is that all four of us, with Colin and then on the TV show with Alex and Chelsea and Dakota and myself, is that we're all best friends. So mm-hmm. Yep. We know when we all kind of feel a little bit off. We know when someone is acting a little bit out of the norm. So the best thing that we do is that we continuously talk to each other and try to make sure everyone kind of feels that they're, still loved. They're still feeling that we're all a group here. like we look out for each other like a mom looks out for their own child, you know, like we're all best friends that way.
Yeah. I think what Colin said definitely isn't correct, where like no one's immune. Mm-hmm. But I also would kind of argue his point, especially years later, having been in this field now. Like, not everyone in the paranormal is a faith-based person. There's some very godless people I've met and worked with.
Right.
And it's interesting because some of those godless people that I know of, those seem to be the ones that get possessed the most. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is true, where it's like we really do focus on the light. We focus on getting through this as a team. And yeah, I would say, I feel like it at least adds an extra big plate of armor at the very least, because I know people who are very godless who seem to get possessed all the time.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right. You're very right about that, Dakota. And there's, sadly, you can look around at any gathering of paranormal people. I'll put it that way. If you go to any paranormal conventions, and you can see that there are many that walk in the light, and there are a few that don't, and you can easily tell who they are. The reason I bring that up, and I'll just tell you this: there's a point in the film, and again, I'm going to be vague about it, and people can find it when they watch it. But there's a point where one of the members leaves temporarily. I won't say who the member is, but it affects you, Dakota, quite deeply. And then we go into the last, which is Pennhurst, the last location, and it affects you, Dakota, very deeply, and you can tell that you're kind of rocked by it. And Pennhurst is not really a location to be messed with. It's very serious, and you guys had a very serious time at Pennhurst, and we'll go through it here on the other side of the break. But it was like even before you went to Pennhurst, you could tell that maybe mentally you weren't quite ready to tackle it, and then even emotionally you're not quite ready to tackle it. And I worried at that point, even before you got to the location, I thought, "Ooh, boy, I don't know that he's ready to walk in there." You know, having been there myself. So, but that was one of those moments that you kind of bite your lip and go, you know, I worry about you, because that's one of those times where, you know, when you walk in with a team and a team that's close, and at that point, it's not like there was a bad, you know, like schism or anything there in the group. It was a point where one of the members had just had enough, and you don't blame that person, because we all need breaks when we do these investigations, and especially when you do one on top of another on top of another. And this was a grind. This was I bow in your general direction to all four of you for doing 5 of those in 5 nights. That, and especially the lineup. I mean, it was a killer's row of locations that you guys took on. To give people an idea that haven't seen it yet, you've got Ashmore Estates, the Randolph County Infirmary. I have them all written down here, but my handwriting is like a serial killer or a doctor. I don't know which one.
Then we hit Hillview Manor.
Yes, Hillview Manor.
St. Albans Sanatorium, and then Pennhurst.
Yep, St. Albans, and in Pennhurst. That's right. See, I can hear. I'll hold it up because we're on camera. Everybody else isn't. But look at that horrible handwriting, isn't it?
Doctor.
I could write you a prescription for anything you need right now, and they'd totally believe you. But it really was a killer's row of locations, and to go for five nights, one after another, after another, after another. I think they're seasoned professional. I shouldn't say professionals, because people will slaughter me if I say that. They're seasoned investigators, put it that way, that I don't think could do that 5 nights in a row. I think they would just kind of, you know, buckle and say that enough is enough. You know,
some who can't even do one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it would get to be a little too much. I tell you what, let's take our break early, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit about some of these locations and some of the things that you ran into on the Trail to Terror. Again, a fascinating movie on Discovery Plus. You're going to want to check it out. The Destination Fear gang did an amazing job. And one of the things I want to ask you real quick before we go to break, you got Bobby Mackey to do the music. How did that come about?
Yeah.
Long story short, I was heading home from a job in Atlanta, and the idea for Trail to Terror had already sparked. Mm-hmm. And I was passing through Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I wanted to meet him because I've always heard of him. And so I called their building, and they answered, and they knew who I was. So we went to Applebee's, and for the whole time I told them the idea, the road trip, everyone sleeps alone. And I was super amped about it because it was fresh. And at a certain point, it hadn't even hit me yet. But then in that meeting with them, I was like, do you guys want to do the score? Do you want to do the intro? And he was very professional. By the time I got home to Minnesota from that road trip back, he had already sent me some lyrics. Wow. I loved them. My only note was try to go with a Johnny Cash vibe.
Yeah.
And then within 2 days later, he had sent me a pre-recorded version he had done in his studio, and it was done within a couple days.
Wow. It's an awesome song too. It really fits the film. So it is awesome. Check it out right now on Discovery Plus. Destination Fear, Trail to Terror. If I can stumble my way through it, Destination Fear, Trail to Terror. It's available right now on Discovery Plus. Just go ahead, download the app on either the Android store or the Apple Podcast store. Is it the Apple Podcast store? I'm so old, I don't know, guys. I'm ancient. It's the Apple store.
I think you can get it in the Apple store, you can get Android store, and then it's available on smart TVs.
There you go. It's available on smart. That's how I get it. I've got an Apple 4K, so that's how I don't use cable anymore. I stream everything. So
exactly.
That's how I watch it. So, all right, when we come back, we'll talk about the movie Destination Fear, Trail to Terror. We'll talk about some of those locations, and we'll talk about some of the absolutely bizarre stuff that the guys and gals ran into while they were on the road there. We'll do that when we come back on the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the Best in Paranormal Podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm Tim Dennis. We're here with Dakota Laden and Tanner Wiseman from Destination Fear. We're talking about Destination Fear, Trail to Terror, which is available right now on Discovery Plus. Again, get the app wherever you can. Watch it on your phone, watch it on your television, on your smart TV, wherever you can get Discovery Plus. There is a commercial version. There's a non-commercial version. Me personally, I have the non-commercial version. Why would you sit there and watch commercials if you don't have to? It's only $1 or $2 extra to do that. So I'm not watching commercials to save my life. I'll tell you that right now. Let's get into the actual movie. I'm impressed. As I told you before the break, I was impressed with the fact that Bobby Mackey is giving you the intro on this deal from the minute we start the movie. I think we get right away. I'm impressed with the fact that we get an idea of your personalities. We get the idea. You set the scene that it's 2015. It's 6.5 years ago. We're getting the idea that you're new and fresh to this thing, essentially. Although I do get the idea that you've done this before. This isn't like your first melee with spirits. You've gone out and tussled the time before, but really this is the first time you're putting it on camera. And it's kind of a fresh-faced look at the world of spiritualism until we start stepping into these different sanatoriums and different buildings. And if you'll pardon my language, it's kind of like as you start stepping into one building into another, you can just tell you're getting the piss beaten out of you from day to day to day, which I don't take glory in watching people get the piss beaten out of them, but, and maybe some people do. I don't. Tell me, describe, if you will, and I'll throw this at you, Dakota. What is it like to be in that scenario when you go into it thinking, yeah, we're going to hit these haunted locations. We're going to, you've got it in your game plan. it's all there. You're going to spring this on your friends. We're going to go in there. We're going to have this great time. And you actually start experiencing it. Is there a point where you just go, maybe this wasn't the greatest idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think I even say that at the very, very end of the movie. Is just, this was a bad idea. I think, yeah, it happened a lot. Because I honestly, like, our expectations were it could be nothing. We could go to 5 buildings and it's just nothing happens, and we'll put it on YouTube, or it's going to be really crazy. We don't know. And then, yeah, by night 3, when people watch the doc, you'll understand that was kind of the oh crap moment. Like this is very real, and we might be messing with something that we shouldn't be. We're tapping the hornet's nest for no reason. And ultimately, yeah, one of us did drop out, and that wasn't a good feeling for me, because my goal wasn't to torture my friends and or any of that, and my sister. It was to get through this as a team, and ultimately that wasn't the case in this doc.
Was there talk amongst the 4 of you before you even took off that, you know what, this might be something that'll totally change our lives, and not in a Hollywood TV blitz kind of way, but could change our lives spiritually?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. We joked around about it a little bit in the beginning of the movie. We're like, this might be the last time we're happy. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we are going to the 5 scariest locations that we can possibly get into, with horrific history and just bone-chilling stories that are happening still there today. And now we're putting that to the test, and we're doing that back to back to back. So we didn't know, like, what could happen, like, how it's going to affect us. But, like I was saying earlier, it's like the one safety net we did have was each other. And, you know, when one of us got sad, one of us was feeling down, we could try to pick each other up. But, I mean, we are going to these places that have affected people in many different types of ways, and we were very wary of that and aware of that. You know, we knew that this wasn't a joke, and that we had to take this seriously, and that we had to be careful, and we tried to do our best the whole way through.
Now, Tanner, I have to ask you, because you mentioned the beginning of the movie where, you know, I got the feeling like you were the only one who was telling people, you know what, this is not going to end well. This is going to be horrible. We're going to run into all this stuff. You're the one up there with the beacon screaming, and everybody else is like, oh, calm down, whatever, you know, everything's going to be fine. Was there moments, like, off camera where you're screaming at these guys going, I told you, I freaking told you?
There were some times where I'm just like, we can't be surprised. Like, this is like, look where we're at. I mean, look around. This is where you're spending the night. Of course it's going to be scary. I mean, I know, like, everyone, like Dakota and Colin, they were very like focused on making sure that they're getting the filming done right and getting all the production done. And Chelsea was very excited to just be a part of it. And me, I'm a very big fan of, like, haunted locations and haunted stories. So, like, I was just like, oh man, like, if I have any guesses, if we're going to any of these places, I mean, especially when we walked into Hillview Manor, I knew right away, like, all right, I know exactly what we're getting into. This is going to be bad. This is going to be horrible. And no spoilers, but it ended up being really, really bad.
What was it? You're looking at the packet and you keep saying this is going to be bad. This is going to be bad. What was your tip off? What was there that looked so bad?
For me, I knew about the location, and like, I'm not like, I wasn't spending my weeks or my weekends like researching places. Like, you know, I'm a fan. Like, I've always watched all the shows that are on TV. Like, we've always gone to haunted abandoned locations, and that was one of our bucket list items. Like, that, going to Hillview Manor was one of the ones that we've always said, like, oh man, if we could ever go, that'd be awesome. Because we've heard the stories, we know the history. And once I got there, I'm just like, okay, like, I actually know what's going on. I know the layout a little bit. I know that, you know, there's certain things that can happen in this building. And I've seen TV shows where they've gone there and that hasn't gone very well. And then just, you know, just things that I've read and researched my personal self, it was a bad place. So I was just like, okay, what are the odds we go here? And it's just the best time of our lives. And it's like a Chuck E. Cheese. There's no way. Like, you know, like this is like, if I'm going to bet any money, I'm putting it all on it's not going well. And yeah.
Interesting thing too, like that night, me and Colin, when we arrived to do the interviews, it's not on camera, but he comes running up to me. He's like, dude, I just saw like a hand go around the corner. It looked like a skeleton. and like an hour later we're interviewing someone and they tell us that exact same thing, and I never knew that.
The creeper
so right
story.
away, me and Colin were like, this is not good. We could feel it when we picked Chelsea and Tanner up. This is also not on camera, and Chelsea and Tanner right away are like, we have a bad feeling about tonight. We don't even know where we're going. In the doc, you can kind of see it when we're approaching. Chelsea's like shaking her head, like I have a bad feeling. And then we arrive, and then Tanner realizes where we are. And he also, that one was so weird to me because everyone who was on different wavelengths were thinking the same thing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I was wondering why that creeper story was in the movie, and then you don't really get any payoff from it. I thought it's a creepy story, but there was no real, now that you explain it, I get it, But I mean, it was a creepy story. But that woman was really that was with Hillview. She was really creeped out that you guys were going in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We had lots of warnings. This wasn't even in the movie, but we had phone calls coming in from our family and our parents saying, and sisters and brothers saying, "I had a nightmare. Are you guys okay? I had a really bad dream about you guys going." Like we had so many people psyching us out too. It was like, I can't believe he did it. Like with how many warnings we got.
So does that amp up your fear even more before you go in there? At that point, are you...
Mm-hmm.
Like we got a call from his little sister and saying like the day before we were going to go into Hillview, and she had a nightmare saying like, like you guys went into this building, something horrible happened, and it affected you guys, one of you guys, for the rest of your life. Like it was not a good thing. So like we're told that, and now we have to play out her dream in real life. Like now we actually have to go into this scary building, being warned from someone having a dream about it, not knowing that we're going into the place tonight. She just like, yep, like someone went into you four went into the building. One of you guys, it'll change you. And yeah, we had to play it out in real life and roll the dice and see if it would happen or not, which was terrifying. And
that was one of those things too. Like we just didn't get on camera. It was like a quick phone call. It was just, there were so many little things that didn't even get recorded like that, or warnings and things from people that were like, dang, I wish we could have got that on camera because it would have made it even more tense.
Man. Boy, would it ever. I mean, you would have, I think you would have scared everybody from going to that place ever again.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy. And that wasn't even your last destination.
No.
You still had to tackle Penhurst.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what?
One thing. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned like the 2015 thing too, and that was actually something, because we genuinely were like, we're going to do this. We literally only had the budget to go rent the RV for 5 days, do this for 5 days. And so one reason you'll see in the film, there's like VHS footage.
Yep.
And that was like the reason we did that was because like VHS footage has a timestamp, just so we could show people like this is the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. And we're leaving and we're on the road heading back to Minnesota on the 11th. And so yeah, that was like an interesting thing we've never really talked about, but we did include that intentionally just so people could see like, okay, can't really make up a VHS camera.
No, you can't. And, I thought that was a nice touch to see the timestamps and know that everything was lining up. It also gives you a reference and you, to give you a better idea of my frame of mind as I'm watching it. It also allows you to track your guys' fatigue and your sleep deprivation and anxiety. It creates anxiety because I'm counting down the time along with you guys. Like how much time is left? Oh my God, we got to go to another place. So it's creating anxiety along with you guys. Like how much longer is this? How much more are they going to put themselves through? So it does create, it does put the viewer in place with you as you're going, to a different place and experiencing a different, I don't want to say adventure because it wasn't an adventure for you at all. But it putting you through a different challenge. Because now, okay, we're going, it's almost like when you drop Tanner and Chelsea off at a hotel, it's like, all right, I can take a breath because now you're going to do, you're going to go shoot interviews. But now, we're right back at another location. well, now it's time to buck up. We're gonna be thrown into another adventure. And some people get that thrill where they're like, yeah, more paranormal experiences. I don't get that feeling with you guys. I get that feeling like, oh, geez, you're going to torture these guys again. I think that's the difference between you guys and another show. It's maybe I'm just too much of a humanitarian to watch your show. I don't know. I don't get a thrill off of watching you guys get tortured. But maybe that's the thrill for some other people is watching you get scared. I do have to ask you guys this. Do you feel, a lot of times when like at your job, and obviously this is your guys' job now. If I'm sitting there and I have a boss who's screaming at me and telling me, you got to have this done, you got to get this done, you got to get this done, my stress level raises to a point where eventually I get blood pressure issues. We'll start with Dakota. Do you find that these repeated scares over and over and over again are having any health effects on you?
Probably. I think even the fact that we spend a full night at these places, like when we do those days, we're up by noon, we're getting our gear prepped by 1 or 2, and then by like 4, we're heading to the location, and then by 6, we're being dropped off. And by noon the next day, we're finally wrapped up and done. Mm-hmm. And so like it's a 24-hour shift for every episode. And I think there could be some health effects with that, but also the psychological stuff. Definitely. I mean, I think we're getting, wow, my camera, I bet. Oh, never mind. We're good. Mm-hmm. I think, like the psychological stuff, though, like we have all had nightmares. We've had times after even Destination Fear now today, when we do road trips, there's lots of little things that happen when we come back that require phone calls and conversations. And there is some effects, but once again, what Tanner was saying earlier, like because it's all 4 of us and we literally are family. Tanner knew Chelsea before I was born. So technically he has a longer lasting relationship with my sister than I do. So like we really are family. And that helps a ton because you're not afraid to go, hey, I'm having nightmares about a 7-foot tall creepy thing. Yeah. He'll go, okay, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the best part is that we all are a family. So we are able to talk everything out, almost be our own therapist to each other. And the best way to do that is to talk to someone who's been through the experience and someone who's been through the experience with you. So there is this almost sense of calmness when you're able to kind of walk through what's going on with you and, just kind of share your story, share what you're feeling with each other. And yeah, I have to agree that there might be some long-term effects that we don't know yet. I mean, those 24-hour shifts are pretty brutal sometimes. I mean, there are times where me and Dakota will wake up and we'll see each other in the middle of the day and I'll just go, man, I didn't fall asleep and this was like when we're at home. Like I didn't fall asleep until like 9 a.m. last night. And he goes, oh dude, same here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like that'll just happen randomly where it's just like all of a sudden your brain just turns on and then you do a whole 24-hour shift at home on accident.
Yeah. Like we've almost developed insomnia from the show. And it's actually a legitimate, like every month, a couple times where it's usually when we have to do something the next day that's important and early that we don't sleep. And it's because our brains are so trained to stay up for 24 hours that it happens a lot. Yep. That's definitely been a problem. I did not have that problem a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
No. I totally believe that. One of the things that, that Zach Baggins got a lot of guff from just the average TV viewer, which I thought was completely wrong at the time. And now when you look at it, is smarter and smarter down the road, is in haunted locations, especially old abandoned haunted locations, he would wear a rebreather mask or a mask that would a filtered mask that would keep him from breathing in anything like asbestos or any dangerous particles, mold, things like that. Is that something that, and I noticed in this particular movie, I know Dakota, you were wearing a mask at one time, especially when you were down in one of the basements. I'm trying to remember which basement it was.
Randolph County, yeah.
Randolph County, that's right. And I thought, smart move. Because whether you have issues with lungs or whatever, you don't know what kind of crap is down there, first of all. And you're down there for multiple hours sleeping, and you don't know what you're breathing in, and you tend to breathe pretty deep when you sleep.
Yeah.
Is that something you tend to do more now, more so than ever before, especially the longer you investigate?
Yeah, I know one thing we do look into asbestos everywhere. We've had to say no to many badass locations because they still have asbestos. But we do to an extent. I think our big thing is like we want to walk around for them, unless it's just really bad, we'll wear a mask the whole night. But the whole walk there, we try to keep it. We want our faces to be seen. But yeah, once we sleep alone, it's like everyone's agreed that like there's no point. We're going to be laying here for hours. Nothing might happen for hours. No need to be breathing in this bad air. Like that'll be half the night. We try not to, if we can.
Yeah.
But it is true. Like some of these buildings have made bad things. Like you shouldn't be breathing in mold. You shouldn't be breathing in asbestos. And
I mean, one of the wildest things actually is we did we showcased Trail to Terror back in like 2016, for a couple people. And one of the main comments was like, why are you guys wearing masks? Why are you guys wearing masks? Like, why did you guys put masks on? And now I've watched the movie with several people and no one has commented on it in the slightest. No one is like, what's going on? And I think it's just wild that, after we've gone through this whole pandemic thing and everyone's so accompanied or is so used to having something over your face now that no one has found it weird. And everyone kind of understands in their mind, like, oh, they're doing it for a health thing. And like now we haven't had to explain that at all. But yeah, we do that just because there are some horrible places. I mean, there was in our first season, we went to a place right before Statler Hotel, and I was coughing up just nasty dust. And that was because I decided not to wear a mask that night. Yeah. So I was coughing up dust. I had to go to the emergency room real quick, get x-rays, and luckily I had nothing wrong with me. Nothing was serious at all. They just said it was dust buildup. And long story short, from there, anytime I see it's a little bit dusty, we put a mask on. And this, especially because these places are sitting dormant and things are falling from the ceiling, paint's chipping off the wall, and it sits on the floor. And it's been sitting there forever. And now we come walking through, just dragging our feet, kicking everything up in the air. Like you don't see those dust particles coming from below all the way up, just going straight into your mouth and into your nose.
Like we take our flashlights sometimes, and you, with your naked eye, you look down a hall and you're like, it doesn't seem that bad. But then you take your beam light and you show, and it's just clouds of dust.
Looks like a snow globe.
And it's like, let's put on a mask. This is, I don't want to be dead in 10 years. I'd like to be living.
Yeah. Dying by COPD is not a good death. That's for sure. I know that.
No, that's not what you want.
Tanner, let me ask you this. When it came to this, movie in particular, there were a lot of scares, and there were a lot of things that you guys were scared by. And I'm not putting that derogatorily, but there were a lot of different phenomena that you guys ran into. Everything from hearing footsteps and hearing things running at you to voices of screaming, of crying, of just torturous voices. There was even a point where it got to Dakota quite badly, where he teared up. Tell me, and if you can you rank like a top 3 of things that really got to you while shooting in those 5 days, that really just freaked you out? That you're like, no, that those things really just got to me.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I have like a particular order, but there are 3 things that like stick out to me like a sore thumb every time like anyone talks about Trail of Terror. One is Pennhurst, when we hear the crying and we hear all those noises and we go check out where we think it's coming from, and then it happens from the other side of the building. Yep. And that part right there was like really. It was bone chilling because like we're trying to find it. Like we almost progressed from the beginning of like running away from it to now like we're chasing it. We're trying to find out where this noise is coming from. And now we can't. And that was just scary, just because it's just like, man, like it's taken us forever to walk across this building, but whatever is making those noises is able to just go boom, boom, right, like as fast as possible. And that was really freaky. Another freaky thing was St. Albans. We're sitting in the bowling alley. And then we hear this noise like chasing us. And it's just freaky when you hear footsteps like that. But I think the main thing for me, the scariest one, if I would have to put like rank of number one, would be the scream in Hillview Manor. I mean, that scared us all to a point where, like, I don't want to give too much away, but it scared us to a point where, like, all of us were like thinking about not doing this anymore. Like, all of a sudden realizing that whatever is in here is scary, could be more powerful than what we think could affect us in a way that we weren't ready for. I mean, like, that scream alone was just one of the most terrifying things I think we've ever run across.
There was in that scene you're talking about at Pennhurst, where the voices go from one side, then quickly go to the other. I'm trying to remember who said it. I don't remember if it was Colin, if it was you, said it's like they're trying to play with us.
Right.
And immediately, and let me get your opinion on this, or at least your take on this as well. I'm trying to remember if it was there or if it was at Hillview that they talked about instances of the demonic. I think it might have been Pennhurst. Did it ever occur to the three of you that were there that it might have been an instance of the demonic at that time, when all of a sudden you hear the voices flip from one side to another, that maybe at that point you're being played by a demonic presence?
See, that's the one thing we talked about multiple times, is like, we don't know what's really going on at this building. I mean, we've gone to places that have had horrible things happen, and, you know, something has repeated in time almost, and that freaks us out. And then there's been times where it just feels like it is intelligent. Something is actually toying with us. Something is actually trying to scare us. And that's when we all are on edge. And that's when we all kind of want to get out of the building, because there's times where you just don't know what you're dealing with. And if you feel unprepared, and what we've been told many times is, like, if you feel threatened, the best thing to do is leave.
Right.
And like, we've had those discussions multiple times, especially in there. And the scary thing is that building, after that happened, was the first time that we actually smelled the smell of sulfur before. And we all know that that's not a good smell to smell when you're in that building doing what you're doing. So that, I mean, Pennhurst was definitely one of those places where we were definitely on edge for multiple reasons. So
I'm wondering then, Dakota, do you have a top three in your repertoire, and when it comes to this Trail of Terror, that top three moments that really got to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, I would agree with those two. Those are definitely some of the biggest. But two for me that are like just mind-bending weird was St. Albans Sanatorium, when we heard, Tanner and Chelsea heard the Native American chants and Civil War cries.
Right.
And like, my mind was racing, like, oh, maybe there's reenactments. That's known to happen in this town, that that the history is well known here. But it's 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday. Like, why? And when you hear the noises, at first it sounds like chanting, and then it kind of sounds like horses even. But then at some point it literally sounds like men yelling, "Attack!" And it's like, what would that be other than a reenactment? Why would there be a reenactment going on at 2 a.m?
Right. Especially in that direction where it's quite literally a river
where the battle took place.
Yeah, it would make no sense.
And then I think this wasn't scary at the time because we didn't even know we captured it. But night 2, Tanner's sleeping, and it wasn't until I was editing, I got home, I literally called Tanner, who was working, and I'm like, dude, like, get over here soon. And I showed him the footage of while he's sleeping, a door actually opens way in the deep background behind him, and he never noticed it, not on the day. It wasn't until months later when I was editing it that I was like, oh my gosh, that night was way worse than I thought. And then, this is a little deep, but later in Destination Fear, we did go to the Randolph County Infirmary again.
Oh, okay.
And we went to that basement, and that same hallway, people for the last several years have experienced that door opening, and we didn't know that before we went there the first time.
Right.
So to hear that people are still experiencing it, and then when we did go there, that hallway where Tanner slept at Randolph turned out to be by far the most active part of our night. It actually was a night that caused Chelsea to cry. Mm-hmm. And so it was like almost double verification for us. Like, whatever's in this basement, it's been here. It's still happening, and it's almost getting worse.
That's crazy. That is crazy. You know, I wanted to address with you real quick, Dakota, that the noises, or the Civil War noises, the Native American noises, just by telling you guys a quick story. And it's kind of relatable. There's a place in Pennsylvania, north of Philadelphia. It was a little home that was called Dannybrook, and it was kind of instrumental in the Civil War as well, or not the Civil War, in the Revolutionary War. And it was a place where Washington brought his troops when they were retreating for a short time. And there's a woods out back of the house, and you can occasionally see a British soldier or a colonial soldier come out of the woods in like a half body apparition, not a full body, but a half body apparition. But if you listen carefully, and we were camping in the backyard, but and the reason for that is so that we could listen into the woods and see if we could hear the sounds of either gunplay or the two armies fighting, the British and American armies, because you could hear them yelling at each other and then returning a volley of fire. It was no more than one or two volleys of fire, but occasionally you'd hear a musket go boom. And it would scare the hell out of you in the middle of the night. And it would happen like 2-3 in the morning. You'd hear, a couple of British voices. You're in Philly, right. You're north of Philly. Where is there British voices yelling at each other to ram down your ammo and fire at the enemy or to line up and get ready to return volley, and you're like, what? And you're in a dead sleep. So a lot of times, especially in open areas like you guys were filming, you're getting Civil War, what sounds like reenactment could actually be a residual haunting, and you're getting these sounds. And when I heard you guys hearing that, I had to smile because it reminded me of my two trips to Dannybrook and hearing those Revolutionary War sounds. So yeah, I went, yeah, I know what that is. And I kind of smiled and I said, residual haunting. So yeah, that was interesting to me that you guys got that on camera, because it's hard to capture those sounds.
Yeah, and it doesn't read this way or show this way, but it was like a 30-minute ordeal where we were just aiming the camera. Every couple minutes we'd hear something, and it just was so mind-boggling because our attention was so on the sanatorium and that history that we almost like overlooked and completely forgot about the history before the sanatorium, which was Civil War battles and Native American land. And all of a sudden it's happening, and it happened so fast that we weren't even recording. All that happened was I'm in the RV and I hear running and I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. I hit record, and that's the first thing. Tanner opens the door. He's like, come out here. And it's so weird. I would have never guessed ever that we'd get that. Yeah.
Just a couple more questions for you here before we leave you today. The time has gone very fast, and I appreciate both your guys' time. Did you ever run into the Goat Man?
Oh, thank God, no.
No Goat Man, no. But honestly, like what Chelsea ended up hearing and what we heard, the running, the trudging, like
yes, yeah.
It definitely sounds way heavier than just like a normal person running and charging. It was deep sound. So I don't know if we saw him, but we may have actually experienced the Goat Man or something big.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That whatever that was scary. That charge was definitely scary. And then recently, I had Jay Haas on the program, and we talked a little bit about you guys listen to my English. I would have got wrapped in the knuckles by a nun for that one. Recently, the team was on with Ghost Hunters on the first episode of this season.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the experience. How was it investigating with the OGs, so to speak, of paranormal investigating?
It was absolutely wild. I mean, that's one of those things where, like, we've all been fans of this genre of just going to these places, experiencing it for ourselves, but we've also all loved the shows. And to have Ghost Hunters like asked us to be on a TV show is the most wildest thing in the world. And like, we're sitting on the couch watching these guys as we're growing up, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, do you want to get on this side of the screen? We're like, we were freaking out, just like having a blast with it. And like, you could tell, like, we're all smiling the whole entire time. They're trying to like talk to us about serious stuff. And I'm just looking at Jason and Steve like, what? It's you guys. It's wild. they're awesome people. Some of the nicest, most genuine people I've ever met. And like, we would love to do more stuff with them because they're just great people.
Yeah. I think too, like, we used to all watch them, and literally, like, me and Alex lived about across the street from each other. Mm-hmm. And so there were days when we both had our home telephones calling each other, watching sci-fi ghost hunters. And we said, oh, you see that? And so like the fact that we got invited was so cool. And one awesome thing was right away, we told Jason, like, you know, we're not investigators. You can't like expect us to come in and add to the team what your other members are already doing. Like, we're really inexperienced. And right away, it's like, yo, like, you guys do what you want to do. Like, if I ask you to do something and you're uncomfortable, don't do it. Mm-hmm. And so like, they were really respectful of our method, so much so that we proposed, like, well, could we try sleeping alone one of the nights? And they're like, yeah, no, you guys could do that. Mm-hmm. We're like, it was awesome. Like, I know, like, we were slightly worried about that. Like, man, like, I hope they're not expecting us to be pros, because we're not. And like, it would just be awkward to like totally fail in front of them. And then right away, Jason, before we even could say it, was like, hey, I understand that you guys have a different way of approaching things, and however you want to go about this, we'll go about it. So that was really refreshing for us.
He was very complimentary of the entire team. He really had a good time investigating with you guys. And he loved your guys' energy. He loved working with you guys. He said you knocked it out of the park. He had a great time. So it was high praise indeed from him. So I asked him one question that he said, I don't know, you'll have to ask them. So this is what I was kind of looking forward to. And it actually ties into the end of Trail to Terror. And it's a statement that you make, Dakota. And what I asked Jason was this. I said, so as a seasoned investigator, I asked Jason, I said, you know, and I know, because Jason and I are about the same age. I said, you become more jaded over time. Things don't affect you as much. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, there's another apparition. Oh, yeah, there's this over here. Oh, yeah, there's that over there. Not much scares or startles you. Okay? You just get older and you get jaded, and you sit there and you put on your Bengay and you nurse your wounds, right? That's kind of how things get. You know, things hurt a lot more on the outside and they hurt a lot less on the inside. That's how life gets. You said at the end of the movie, Dakota, that you believe that these things feed on fear. Okay. But there's only so much of that as you get older. You start to become jaded to fear. Mm-hmm. You do get startled from time to time, but really that fear begins to fade. There's not much that begins to scare you. You become an owly old son of a bitch when you get older. That's just how things go. So let me ask you this. Is there a point where the mission changes with Destination Fear? Do you see that? And I'll ask you, Dakota, and then you, Tanner.
Yeah, you know, I think with us, one thing we all have agreed on is getting a little scarier as we do it, because with every experience, you now know what to expect. And we've all had things happen that have really shooken us to our core. So whenever we go into a new building, that thing that shook us to our core is in the back of our brains. And so it almost gets worse over time. But if it ever did get to that point where we were jaded and the fear was gone, I would say we're probably done. Then we're done with our mission. This was our goal. I personally don't want to take that next step to become a team investigators. And I just don't think that's our calling. I know me, Alex, and Tanner, we're all filmmakers, writers, and producers. And so this is an awesome experience for us to continue that skill set. And if it gets to that point where either we're getting jaded or maybe someone wants us to go the next step, we probably won't do it just because, I don't know. This is just, I feel like hopefully one step for us in our careers, and the next step might be something completely different. I think unlike a lot of these other shows, I and Tanner and Alex, we're filmmakers at heart, and ghost hunters and explorers as a hobby and for fun and to chase fear. So I don't personally want to get to that level. And if it does happen, if the fear's jaded, I think we're going to call it quits at that point. Like, we did it, we conquered fear. That was kind of the goal. And let's move on with our careers. I know everyone at our house here is writing every day. We're writing scripts, comedies, horror movies. And I think this is more of a stepping stone for our careers than locked in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can just echo the same exact thing. As like, I think the fun thing about our show is that we are showing fear. Not all other shows want to allow them to be scared or scream on camera. Everyone wants to kind of be the toughest guy in the room. And for us, we're just like, we're comfortable showcasing that, you know, we might get scared when we go into the scariest building of all time. Like, that's perfectly fine with us. And I'd have to agree with Dakota is like, you know, our mission is to see what happens with fear, what happens in a building when you showcase fear. And is there any type of reaction to that? And, you know, if we find out that we're not the best guinea pigs anymore, then it's either time to swap out for somebody else to do it or just to stop the experiment.
All right. Well, guys, I want to thank you both for joining me today on Darkness Radio. It's been informative, and I want to encourage everybody, go out, get Discovery Plus right now if you don't have it, and check out Destination Fear, Trail to Terror. It is not only entertaining, but it's a little bit educational too, as to if you ever want to scrounge up a ghost. I think you guys have figured it out. I don't think anybody has a better method out there. That's for sure. It is entertaining, and it is an experiment in psychology. I'll put it that way, and an experiment in fear. That's for sure. And I had a great time watching it. I actually watched it twice.
Hey, thank you.
I did. I watched it twice, and I was entertained by it, and I absolutely had a good time with it. So I thank you guys for that piece of filmmaking, and look forward to new stuff that's coming out. Now, what do you have new that's coming out?
Well, I can't quite share everything, but we have some cool things in the works. I don't think Destination Fear is dead. And on top of just the show, we also have a couple ideas for, I'll just say it because it might not ever happen, but we really want to do another Trail to Terror at some point where we go back to that way of shooting, a continuous road trip that's not nonstop, no days off. And we would call it Return to Terror.
Okay.
And we would, the idea for now is we want to go back to 3 of the places that affected us the most in our Destination Fear seasons and do it in one continuous road trip and almost return to the places that affected us. And who knows? We don't have it all plotted out yet. It might even be interesting to bring Colin along since he's never been to these places and get his raw encounter, the raw experience, while we're also trying to follow up. But there are a handful of places we've been to now with Destination Fear that absolutely have left us wanting more and questions.
And we talk about some of these locations almost every day. So there's some locations there that we definitely want to go back to and actually figure out, you know, was it a fluke that time or is it actually still scary? And then there's some other things that we have in the works that I don't know if we are allowed to talk about yet, but we're trying to give you guys some more of us.
Yes, as much as we can. And that whole Return to Terror thing is not official for anyone watching this. This is literally us. We haven't even brought it to the network yet. So we're just, it's an idea though, because we literally are like, man, there's several places that would be so fun to do in one road trip in return. Not fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Fun
in a certain way.
Fun and scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can't talk about the projects that are coming up here shortly, but that's okay. We've got plenty of Destination Fear on Discovery Plus that people can tune into. How do people look you up if they want to hit you up on social media?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to go to the Destination Fear at Destination Fear, Instagram or Twitter. And then from there, you'll be able to find all of our personal pages. And
All right.
Easy way to do it.
Sounds good. All right, folks. Well, check it out. It's on Discovery Plus right now. Destination Fear, Trail to Terror. You can check it out, of course. It's available, I believe, for under $5 a month with commercials and then plans on top of that. So check it out right now. You can get it on your smart TVs. You can get it in your app stores and do so today. I want to thank everybody for joining us this week for some great programs. Just one reminder, I know we're all kind of wrapped up in world events right now, and we are sending our thoughts and prayers to the people in Ukraine. And want to remind you, too, that there are other battles going on around the world, people fighting for freedom. As you're out and about this weekend, go ahead and approach a service person and thank them for fighting for your freedom, because freedom is not free. And we want to thank them for giving their service to our country and continuing to do a good job for fighting for our freedom so that we can be free in this country. Folks, join us again next week for more great times and more in the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio.